Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I am your host, DelSheree Spinner. I am a high school teacher and novelist, and I am excited to have two guests on this week. We have Paul J. Knight and Chris Allen, and they're going to be talking about their book, The Music of Creation, which came out recently from Artemisia Publishing, and I'm excited to chat with them. It's an interesting concept that I had a lot of fun reading, and so Chris, do you want to start introducing yourself first?
Paul's senior author, so why don't we let him go first?
All right.
I was born on the East Coast, but moved out here 50 years ago. I'm a field biologist by living, which I still do surveys all around the state for rare, threatened, and endangered plants and animals just in the Farmington area. Obviously, I also write, and I do play a little bit of music, but I am not accomplished. I play the harp and the guitar.
Right. And Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a retired archaeologist. I also used to do a lot of work in the Four Corners area. A lot of work, Grants, Gallup, Farmington, doing oil and gas clearances for exploration. And maybe about, 10, 15 years ago, I decided to get into creative writing. So I joined a group called the Corrales Writing Group. It's a group of about 5 to 6 individuals who get together every 2 weeks to critique their work. And I found I really, really loved creative writing. But it was hard. I had done technical writing, archaeological reports for 25 years. So to make the switch from, the kiva is 6 meters from the southwest corner of the Pueblo kind of thing, to actually writing stuff that engages people was a bit of a challenge, but I love it. When Paul came up with the idea for the Music of Creation, we decided to collaborate and work together on it. And as I tell people, as a married couple, we sometimes can't agree what color to paint the bathroom, but somehow we were able to write a book together.
Good. Yeah, sometimes that working together with someone you're close with in your everyday life can be a bit of a challenge. I'm glad that worked out. And well, it's funny because this was quite a few years ago teaching a class, and I can't remember exactly what he did. It was some sort of field work while he was writing reports for his daily job. And I remember him saying something about how he would get so frustrated writing those reports that he couldn't put in any good description. It was all so technical, and he just had so many more things to say in his reports, but that wasn't the appropriate forum for it.
I know. I used to work for the University of New Mexico, and we wrote reports for ranchers. And I would tell the crew, just make it interesting for them, But it was hard because agencies don't want to see that,
Yeah.
But ranchers would have enjoyed it. So,
well, with this one, so tell us a little bit about the book, The Music of Creation, and just its overall concept and what it is.
For me, I grew up really without music in the house. My mother didn't like music at all, didn't even turn on the radio. Once I got out here, was in graduate school, I decided I'd like to try playing something, which was the guitar, which I was not very good at. Later on, the harp, which I'm passable at. But I started getting interested in watching the impact music has on behavior. To me, it's unconscious. It's part of the human fabric of things. You'll see somebody cleaning the house, and if they're by themselves or you're listening from a distance, they'll all start humming something they maybe made up on the spot. But it goes even beyond that. You'll see people driving down the highway singing out loud in their cars. So I began to get interested in, where music came from and how it affects us in the natural world. And I quickly found out that there were multiple musical instruments found 40,000 years ago in caves in Europe. And more recently, even more surprising, is they found a Neanderthal cave in Slovenia that was 60,000 years old with a flute in it. So music has been around since people become people evolutionarily. And it has persisted up till now. And obviously, a lot of people know about the effects it has on not just people, but plants. Like mung beans like music a lot. They grow better if it's played to them. There's something really certainly at a physical, but almost maybe even atomic level that has an effect on organisms. And the premise of the book was, what if this is endemic to Earth? Only we can perceive this effect. What if it had a different kind of effect on other species, some other planets that may exist? Almost a narcotic effect. How would that be perceived? And how would it influence their societies? So that was the foundation and premise for the book.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really interesting. I get a really wide variety of books for the show. So I never quite know what I'm getting. And, there's certain genres that you get a crime thriller, you kind of know what you're getting, what the the format and generally like what to expect. And this one was surprising because it was taking a very different approach to talking about music and its power and how it affects people. And so I found it really interesting just because it got me thinking about different aspects of what humans create and where that comes from and things like that. And so I always enjoy when a book gets me to start thinking about what it connects to and other things beyond that. And I thought this was a really fun way to approach that, and especially younger readers who maybe are like, I don't know, it's hard to get younger people, at least in the school setting where I'm interacting with them most of the time, to critically think and take things the next step and not just, be like, oh, somebody said this, I guess it's true, I'll go with it. And forever my like battle with students of like, think a little harder about that, please.
When you think about music, it not only affects you emotionally or mentally, but if you're in a rock concert, you can actually feel musical vibrations in your body. You can feel the pounding of the bass. So, we know it has an effect. And so our premise is, if Earth is the only place that creates music and alien species have discovered that it has this powerful effect on them, this narcotic effect on them, what would they do to acquire musicians and composers? So that's why we set up two different groups of aliens. We have abductors who come in to kidnap Earth's composers and musicians and essentially use them as slave labor to produce music off-world. And then we have another group of aliens, the protectors, who have discovered music on Earth 200 years prior and treasure it and want to protect it. So they've developed a system where they can come in and hide in our society, but at the same time protect our musicians. And of course, as you know, we have one main character, Ryan Riley, who is a teenager in Ireland, who has extraordinary ability. And when that ability is discovered, the abductors make every effort to capture him, highly prized commodity. So when the abductors discover this, they marshal all of their resources to come in and try and abduct him and take him off world. And then at the same time, the protectors also recognize his ability and try and do everything they can to save him, and hence the conflict of the book. And as the book progresses, Ryan's ability increases, and to the point where he can actually affect space. So will the protectors and the abductors, what will happen as they get closer to him and his ability increases? Will the protectors be able to save him before Ryan destroys the universe?
And I liked that you guys set up that dual conflict of not only is it like the protectorate against the abductors trying to see like who can protect him and save him, but then he adds this other layer of danger because of his abilities, and he's putting everyone else in danger unknowingly. He doesn't realize he's doing it half the time. Sometimes it's happening while he's asleep or things like that.
Exactly.
So yeah, it adds these other aspects to it of not only is there this kind of agency conflict, but he himself. And I thought that spoke to young readers because I think they often are unaware of how their actions and choices affect the people in the world around them.
Right.
And, on a day-to-day level, I see that with my students all the time, but this in kind of a different setting, I still thought it was interesting to have that added layer of complexity of if you don't have like control of yourself, then that can spill over and have some negative consequences to the people around you, and for him to the whole the whole universe, which a little bit higher stakes there.
And as you know, Ryan, because of an accident he had as a child and a disfigurement he was very reclusive growing up. And now suddenly he's thrust into an intergalactic war. So we had fun writing it.
Well, and I wanted to ask you about the world building aspects, because as you've mentioned, you've got these different alien species. They've grouped together in different kind of collaborations with the abductors. It's multiple different groups who've kind of formed this network of kind of working together on some level. And then you've got the rules of how these worlds work together and how the music affects things. That was a lot to figure out, like, what are the rules and how do we stay consistent with it? And that's something I see with my students and young writers and just new writers, no matter what age they are. World building can be really hard because there's a lot of things you have to think about. And a lot of the time, you think you have a set of rules in place, and then you get, 8 chapters in and you're like, wait, this isn't making sense anymore. I've got to go back and fix things. So what was you guys' approach? Did you work a lot of that out ahead of time? Did you build it as you went and then go back and fix things? What was your process like?
Basically worked it out ahead of time. It seemed natural. If you can put yourself, I would put myself in that position and try to imagine being the characters and see what kinds of calamities and things I'd have to respond to. And each time, and it happened many times, I get in past a certain point and realize, oh, well, God, I have to deal with that now. So I have to go back again and rewrite it. So it was a constant process of readjusting. But by being able to put yourself into the character, you're applying your solutions to those problems as they occur. And that was pretty much the process. It builds on itself as it goes along. It gets a little bit more complicated because we're dealing with different points of view from the abductors when we're talking with them. They have a whole different set of paradigms and problems to deal with versus the protectorate or versus the main characters. In some ways, I wanted the characters, Lindsay and Ryan, to be somewhat not naive, but to the point where they're not really worldly, if you see what I'm saying. They're both sort of reclusive, somewhat solitary lives, even though they may have friends.
Well, yeah, especially with Lindsay, where this is kind of her first mission. She's been in training and she's been undergoing this process of surgical intervention to look more human. And so she's kind of coming out of this bubble of like theory of how to do her job. And then it's like, and now you're going to do it at the highest level possible where the stakes are crazy high and she's expected, I mean, kind of not like they don't intentionally throw her into it because other people are not available for various reasons. I don't want to spoil too much, but she's kind of thrown into this situation where she is a newbie and all of a sudden it's, you know, the worst situation possible that she could be in charge of, basically.
Right, until she arrives vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of those things with like YA literature, particularly. It's always hard to find that balance of realism. Realistically, what can a teenage person accomplish and do to not make it feel like too far-fetched and let young readers like really relate to it and feel like, yeah, I could make hard choices and do hard things and come out of it. And I feel like this one, I liked that you guys kept the mom in the picture and she was part of the group. Because a lot of times in YA, like the parents, you know, are dead or disappear or who knows. The parents are cut out of the story to kind of artificially make the teens have to do all the hard things. But you guys actually left the mom in the story to where she's part of the group working with them. And she kind of adds this like balancing layer to where there is still a mature person and a voice of reason when things get really chaotic. So I wanted to ask you about that, of keeping the mom in the picture and not going kind of the usual route of it's all on the teens, you have no help, survive or don't.
You know, it's interesting you talk about young adult because we didn't intentionally set out to write a young adult novel. Paul came up with the basic plot. He comes up with the basic characters. And then my role is to take his writing and change it from the more technical, as a botanist, the more technical into more creative writing. And I add the layers of characterization and add the layers of setting. But again, neither one of us intended to write a young adult novel, although a lot of people perceive it to be such. We simply wrote an adventure story with a sci-fi environment that happened to have two teenagers as the focal point. It wasn't intentionally to be a young adult novel.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I mean, as an adult reader, I had fun with it and enjoyed it as well. So I wouldn't say like it's only for young readers. I guess I'm thinking more like bookshelf classification.
Right.
It would likely be classified as young adult. I hate that in the publishing industry, we have to always classify things like that. But I like the range of appeal there's a lot for the young readers, but you left in a lot that older readers get a lot out of it as well. And that you have that range of characters too, because you also have the protectorate side where you're getting their perspective as they're trying to figure out what's going on and monitor them and figure out how to help them. But because of a disruption in their communication, they're kind of bystanders throughout most of the story because they can't communicate and help. So I liked that range of ages and characters and how they could interact and the roles that they played in the story.
There's one thing that I would say, Bridget is a really key character because Lindsay grew up without a mother or father, only when she was little. And in many ways, she looks at at the mother and sees how she deals with the world. And I think it helps Sarah progress as a development of the character because of that. There's another character that is the military doctor, and she's the voice of absolute truth, no matter how painful it may sound or be. There are a few characters that were in there for that emotional side of human nature.
I think having that range, especially in something with what you guys built, where it's multiple worlds all kind of colliding at the same time, that you get different points of view from the different sides on what's important and how things should be handled. So I thought it was interesting on the protectorate side of things, they're usually very nonviolent. They're there to protect, and they go about it in a way that they're not intruding on people's lives. They're there and they form these friendships and bonds so that they can stay near a person to protect them. But they're not usually in a role where they're physically having to defend themselves or be the aggressors. And then that changes when basically kind of this war breaks out over Ryan and who can get to him first. That it's very shocking to Lindsay particularly to suddenly have to be in a situation completely different than what she's trained for, that now she's having to figure out how to actually physically protect. And sometimes that means using violence or traps at one point and things like that. And that's a really hard mental pivot to make just as regular people when you think you're going into one situation and then all of a sudden it shifts on you and you've got to rethink everything that you're doing. And I liked how you guys handled that with her character, that it is a struggle. It's not like, okay, now I need to go into combat girl mode. And now I'm this different person than what I started with. So I wanted to ask you about her characterization in just handling that transition of her, because she really changes a lot over the course of the story.
Discovers one of her friends has been injured in the conflict. And I think that was a very difficult thing for her to experience. And it had a fundamental effect on her. I wrote the book and I cried when I read that scene. And I think some of it evolved naturally. I don't think we deliberately did some of the things you mentioned. It just happened in the course of the writing.
Because it needed to, right? You feel that as an author.
And one of the things that benefited us too, to get back to an earlier point, is that this book, we ran it through the Corrales Writing Group. And when you have a critique group, when you have people who are reading it chapter by chapter, they see things that you don't see. And, we have 5 questions we ask for every submission. One is, what is working well? Where were you confused? And where are things repeating? And then there are a couple of other questions. But those things where you repeat concepts, it's really valuable because you don't realize you're doing it as an author, that you may be talking about something too many times, right? And a critique group can show you that. They can tell you where they don't understand a plot. And then the other thing that's important is to have beta readers after you've finished writing something. Because the critique group sees it chapter by chapter, but a beta reader is going to be reading it as if they had taken it off the shelf at Barnes & Noble. And presumably they're going to read first chapter to last chapter, and they can tell you where you've got a flaw in the plot or you have a flaw in the characterization. So we wrote the book, but it really is a collaborative effort of so many people to help us fulfill the goals of the book.
Yeah. Well, I think especially with something like this, where there's a lot of world building and bringing in different elements and rules and does everything work? A lot of times you have more in your head than what ends up on the page. And so it can make sense to you because you know all the other stuff that you've thought about and worked out. And then somebody reads it and they're like, what are you talking about? This makes no sense.
Really funny you should say that, because that was a conversation Paul and I had a lot. He would send me a chapter and then I would review the chapter and I would say, wait a minute, why is this character doing this? And he would go off and explain all the backstory. And I went, okay, sweetie, that's in your head. It needs to be on the page.
Yeah, it is. Finding a good group and beta reader can be so valuable in developing, especially complex worlds. But just in general, looking at, character reactions, or is the pacing and the flow of the story right? Did a part really drag because you're just in their head for 15 pages and nothing's happening?
Yeah. You know what you want to write. You know the story you want to create, but it doesn't always transfer well to the page. And you need somebody to check you on that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, with this one, I was curious as far as like the science aspects of it, because as you mentioned, science fiction, bringing that in. What aspects did you have to like go through and research, and how much did you kind of invent as far as the scientific physical laws of what was happening in these worlds?
I'll take that.
Yeah, a lot of it is actually based on a lot of research and coordination dealing with the brain development. My brother's a neurologist at Berkeley, so we had him go over it early on and go over the actual physical and physiological plausibility of the plot. And then the other side to it is I did research, astronomical kind of research, and in fact, they have found one of the waves from the Big Bang, which theoretically is actually a physical wave that can be characterized as almost music. So basically, sound has been around forever, and humans, and it became part of their psyche. So yeah, there was research done all the way through, even the stuff we already talked about, musical instruments, how long people have been making it. You're talking a very long time. It could go back as far as Neanderthals, a couple 100,000 years.
As Paul mentioned, his brother is a neurologist at Berkeley, and one of his colleagues is Daniel Levitin, who wrote a book called This Is Your Brain on Music, and it's the science of a human obsession. You know, the idea that music has an effect on the neurology, on your neurology, is been well known. I think Daniel's book is from, 10 years ago maybe or more. It's been around for a while.
See, that title sounds familiar. I haven't actually read it, but it's one I've heard mentioned a few times. I should pick it up. It is really interesting, and it's funny, when my kids were little was kind of when baby Einstein was super big, and, you know, hospitals were giving away classical CDs with every baby. Like, this will make your baby smarter. It was kind of, well, that's not exactly how that works, but good thoughts all the way around to expose kids to classical music. It is really interesting looking at the ways that music affects the human brain and our behaviors and our thoughts, and just dealing with, you know, day-to-day anxiety and focus and trying to get yourself into a particular mood or mindset. It can really have interesting effects and be very helpful. And I think it's something that we get lost in just the general noise of modern society today, that it's like, you know, scrolling through endless TikToks or something is very distracting and has an opposite effect of kind of making your brain like check out. And like, we have so much of that in our day-to-day lives of just like mindless brain numbing activities that it really takes effort and intention to focus and do things that are like beneficial to our brain health. And it's, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy to see that today, that like so much of our day-to-day lives, our activities are geared toward dumbing down our ability to think and process things. And we're so used to it. It's crazy.
I raised sheep, and a couple of weeks ago, we sheared the sheep. And so afterwards, I sent some of my friends a video from England of sheep shearers shearing sheep to the music of Staying Alive. And I posted this video of these shearers staying alive to the rhythm of Staying Alive. And then I apologized for giving them an earworm, because I suspect that song replayed in their heads the whole rest of the day. And I felt badly about that.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happens. Like, certain tunes just get stuck in your head for a long period of time.
Yep, exactly.
Another side to this is, and this is, again, sort of a technical approach, but playing music has a substantial effect on cognitive ability and improves it. If you looked at any of the literature, if you actually play music, good or bad, it doesn't matter. If you do a brain scan of somebody before they're playing music, you'll have a little area here, a little area there, lit up. In music, almost the entire surface of the brain is integrated. So it has a really profound effect on the human body.
Mm-hmm.
Again, why?
Yeah, I think there's still so much more room for studying its effects, and particularly education and having more music programs in schools. And I know where I live here in Farmington, we're kind of an oddity with the amount of music programs. Like, we have band and orchestra that starts at 6th grade and is open to, you know, whoever wants to sign up for it. And our district really supports music education, but I know a lot of schools don't have that. And it's one of those things, there's so many things in education that I'm like, there's so much research and we don't do any of these things, but but so much research with like the benefits, as you were saying, Paul, of like kids who play an instrument, whether they're any good at it or not, but just that mental exercise of playing it and learning. I mean, because there's a lot of like math involved in music, it brings a lot together. And still, like we just, in most areas, we don't prioritize that. You know, it's like there's 30 minutes twice a week of music time for elementary kids. And then for a lot of kids, it's kind of the end of music for them in their school life. And it's really unfortunate that we don't have more of that in more schools and like follow the research that shows how beneficial that can be.
Yes.
Well, like I said, education, I don't know. It's a strange beast that doesn't make a whole lot of sense most of the time.
Critical in a country that values a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You hope the people know what they're doing.
Yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes not so much. We'll see. Well, we are already getting close to our time to wrap up. So I did want to ask you guys what you have as far as projects that you're working on now or upcoming projects that you want to share so people can keep an eye out.
We have a book almost completed now, sci-fi set wholly or mostly in New Mexico. Basically, the Mirror of Eternity. And it deals with, it's a very similar situation with characters that are developing in relation to exterior stress on their lives.
Yeah, it has a sci-fi premise. What else? We have another book in the works, which is set in Chaco Canyon. And it will be a novel about modern day archaeologists compared with the real activities that happened at Chaco Canyon in, 1000 AD. So that book is pretty long. That's coming. And I have, my forte really is short story. So I have a number of short stories. I've got one out right now to the Writer's Digest annual contest. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. And I'm just personally convinced that there are gremlins out there that get into books after they've been published and deliberately insert typos. You've done everything, you've proofed it, you've done everything, and the book is published, and you read it, and you get on page 42, and there's a typo. That's my typography team that got in there and put that typo in.
I know. There's always at least one, it seems like, hiding out somewhere.
Absolutely.
Well, where can people find you guys online and find your books and just stay aware of what you're doing?
Okay, we have a website for the Music of Creation, themusicofcreation.com. Our books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and hopefully at some local bookstores.
Yeah, we have some great bookstores in New Mexico that do a good job of supporting indie authors and small publishers. So I always appreciate that. There's a few new ones, it seems like, that have popped up over the last little bit, too, that are very small press indie focused. So
yeah,
I appreciate
a lot of people
that.
are publishing these days. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time. I know you guys have been really busy, but took the time to sit down to chat with me and be on the show. And just, thank you so much, and stay in contact with your future projects.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Four Corners area.
Yes. Thank you for having us.